Everything you do is all right. Everything you do is okay. Everything you do is all right, all right. And
Well, yeah,
okay.
man, hey, it's great to meet you. Thanks for taking a minute out. And before we get into the new album and your life and music, this last 3.5 years or so, being an artist living through the pandemic's been quite a thing. How did you get through it, and how has it subsequently changed you?
Well, I think it changed everyone. I don't think there's any time you can go through something that massive and not change us. But ultimately, I think the beauty of it is that in certain Asian cultures, the word for crisis and opportunity is the same. Because necessity is the mother of invention. So it forced us to use things like Zoom, and I was able through the pandemic to be able to connect with people and do music remotely and record albums remotely and do remixes remotely and just think a little bit outside of the box. It was tough though. And in the beginning, I remember that, when everything shut down, there were no gigs. We were doing all of the at-home concerts. And I did about 5 or 6 on Instagram, and I was like, I don't know if this is for me. But I'd see people pop in for a second, and you pop out, and, the numbers changing and stuff. And so, but I did actually, ironically, it got picked up by CNN. They were like, "Hey, what are artists doing? Can you explain what artists are doing during the pandemic?" I was like, "Well, yeah, people are hopping on and doing these concerts." And then, like, immediately after that aired, I was like, I'm not doing any more of these at-home concerts. But I decided to actually write a book during the pandemic, which was a pivot for me because I knew that was something that I could just kind of do solo, alone, walled up in the house, sheltering in place, like a Henry David Thoreau, Walden Pond situation. So I was I was in it to win it. But yeah, so I wrote a book. It took about 2 years to finally publish. It came out in 2022, but started in 2020. And I started a podcast as well. I did about 50 interviews of different musicians, just learning about what they were doing in the Grammys. And then later on, I pivoted into a TV show, Josh Gates Tonight. I did 2 seasons of being the house band leader for that. And so the pandemic was great because that show was able to be created because this guy who was kind of like oh god, Indiana Jones kind of guy. But he had started the show where he wanted to interview people, and he was able to have that show to interview all these great people because of the pandemic, because everybody was still at home. So I think, like I said, there's a lot of opportunities in there, but definitely was excited when music came back and it exploded. I mean, people who would never go out were like so happy to get out in LA that they were like, we're out. All those people who were like, oh, I can't cross the 405. We're divided by all of our highways. Would finally be like, I'll take that drive. I'll go a little further. So I think that was good. And it's pretty much normalized. And then I remember, a couple of months ago, I went out to Palm Springs and I went to see Kool and the Gang at one of the casinos, and it was just packed. And I thought to myself, wow, like 3 years ago, I was literally at home by myself, and I saw no one for months. And then now it's like, wow, there's too many people like close to me. But I think, I think we just gravitate to whatever projects we could do and try to stay sane as much as possible. But it didn't stop us, though. I think that's what we found out is that we're more resilient than we think in music or in life or anything else. And it just caused us to think about, who else can I work with? Like with one of the remixes, I worked with a guy in Germany. I mean, I could have done that anyway, probably, but ultimately it was like, geography doesn't hold us back anymore. There's so many ways of doing things that we wouldn't have thought of. And luckily we had the pandemic when there was technology. I mean, if it was 100 years ago, the Spanish flu, not much you could do at the time.
That's right. I thought about that quite a bit. That's amazing, man. You did diversify and do so many things. So, the focal point here is your latest album, You Showed Me the Way. Such a great mix of genres coming together. Talk to me about artistically stitching this project together.
Well, it's definitely a labor of love. I don't call it necessarily an Ella Fitzgerald tribute, but I do say it's inspired by Ella Fitzgerald. So they are all songs that Ella Fitzgerald did. And I did that for a number of reasons. You Showed Me the Way was the first song that she co-wrote for Chick Webb. And a lot of people don't know that. And it was actually done by a very young Billie Holiday first. And still, I think, lesser known, than her first big hit, It's Just Good Tasket, which we also flip and do on the record. But mostly Ella Fitzgerald tributes. There's one really great one. I know you've interviewed Gordon Goodwin recently, and he did one with Patty Austin. I think they're always done by women. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do any Ella music as a man. It just didn't come up, and she had just an amazing range, an amazing musicality, improvisation. You watch the documentary, just one of those things, and they show how she does all these crazy quotations. They're like, in that one song, she's done 45 songs mixed in there, and I love doing matches and stuff like that too. So that was kind of that, and then also just the love of the Great American Songbook. I mean, so many great writers. You have Duke Ellington and Fats Waller and Porter and Gershwin and I sent it out to some people who were really in the jazz world, and they were like, wow, this is like a jazz record, but it's not a jazz record, and it has all these styles mixed into one. And that's what I wanted. I really wanted to be able to show the breadth of what jazz can do and beyond. And as an artist, I really wanted to stretch myself. I think jazz lends itself not only to have a sophistication and the lyrical content, but sophistication and the melody and the range. And so as a singer, to really be able to use my 3-octave plus range, I don't normally get to do that. I usually stay in the funk world, kind of in loops and kind of in that mid sweet spot. So it was definitely that. And then I definitely remember, since I hadn't done jazz, working with an arranger, another Berklee cat named Moon from Japan. We spent so much time on just the arrangements, the level of work it took to make this album, in terms of not only finding really great personnel, but we wrote it through compose. Like I sent it to one piano player, and he was like, "You put a lot of ink." Like it's just all written out, which I had never done. Like everything was very by ear and by rote. And this was like, no, we're making it like a classical symphony. Like this is gonna be start to finish, note to note. Everything was thought out and really well prepared. So then we dug into different styles of, I love Stevie Wonder and Al Jarreau, and I was like, how can we incorporate that? How can we incorporate Latin? How can we incorporate in one of the songs I did a quotation of Moondance. I was like, how do we put Van Morrison in this place where it's like that fits, because I find that to be jazzy, but how does that fit into Thelonious Monk Around Midnight? It does now, so I you really have this blank canvas and a paintbrush where you can kind of do whatever you want out of your mind's eye and let that come forward. And every project I always try to do something a little different. So this one is unlike any project that I've done and will do. And I really enjoyed the process of doing it.
So everything began for you in the church. That's where roots were musically sowed for you. Take me back to your childhood and how this love of not only jazz, but mixing the genres and having your very unique voice. How did all of this evolve into you today?
No, that's a great question. Well, I come from many different churches. All my family pretty much are ministers. I'm the black sheep, one of the ones that isn't. But I tell people that I'd rather perform on a stage than preach on a pulpit. But there's a lot of parallels, a lot of that transference of energy, call and response, and I put that into the music. A lot of the artists, obviously, that a lot of us love came from the church growing up. You look at it, Aretha Franklin or James Brown or Al Green, and many others. Ray Charles. Everyone has those elements, and so I think gospel, again, it really helps you to develop a really great ear for music, and I think why I'm able to do a lot of harmonies and stuff. A lot of my extended family, they had a version of church where they like Footloose, outlaw dance. They outlawed instruments, and so you could only sing. And so my family is very adept in singing. It's very intricate 6-part harmony, like everyone's like a mini Take 6 or Manhattan Transfer. And so as a kid, as my voice was changing through the years, you just show up and they're like, you're alto today, like you're soprano today, you're tenor, you're falsetto today. Okay. So it's like I was always just finding out, where do I fit in? Where do I fit in? I was like the little one. following all these great people around. And so as I just kind of grew up in a bunch of gospel choirs and studying that music and listening to great piano players and organists, and then later into jazz and R&B, listening to clavinet and other stuff, it really just helped me to understand that pretty much anything is possible. But ultimately for me, it also allows me to inject a lot of joy into the music, a lot of jubilance. And I say that I make kind of secular gospel in a way. I want it to be for the people, for the masses, not necessarily for people who ascribe to a certain religion, because I feel like music and joy is for everyone.
So now that you're in this profession and you've made it to this point where you're performing live, was there always a stage or a venue that you wanted to play at, you dreamed about, and you finally did it?
Oh, yes. I mean, many stages and definitely more to come. I mean, moving in LA, playing on the Sunset Strip, that was a big deal when I came 20 years ago. And so definitely did that. But actually, we're gearing up to very soon be at the NAMM conference, and we're finally playing the main stage, the Grand Plaza stage, the Yamaha stage this year. That has been done by people like Gorman Goodwin, but also bands like Tank and the Bangas, etc. And so, yeah, I mean, it shows the trajectory of sticking with it. And I tell people all the time, nothing that I did ever worked out exactly the way I wanted the first time. So I always have to beg and beg and beg to finally get up there, whether it be being endorsed by Nord or anything. And so, what happened essentially is a handful of years ago, I was like, I want to play NAMM, and the first year they were like, oh, we don't have a spot for you, but Dine Audio is looking for people to play these shipping containers. And I was like, okay, great. And then we were like in these cargo containers recording music in this fishbowl in front of an audience that we can't touch and this kind of vacuum. And that was cool. And we released an album live from NAMM. I think that was in 2019. And then CNN picked that up. And that's how I got to, have the connection with the CNN people. And then from there, we came back and we said, let's do NAMM again. They're like, we don't have a spot for you, but Jam in the Van wants to do some cool video recording and put them on YouTube. Can you do that? And so I was like, sure, let's do that. And then finally after that, they were like, hey, can you do the side stage? And I'm like, sure. And then finally like, hey, can you do the main stage? I was like, absolutely. So, it just took a few steps, but music is not a linear path. But yeah, that's still something I'm really looking forward to, because that stage is gigantic. The sound is great. It's right in the middle of everything. Everybody will see it. So it's the biggest music conference on the West Coast and in LA specifically. And so, I see Stevie Wonder walking around every year. I see people, great musicians, drummers, guitarists. I've seen so many clinics and so many things. So just to be on that roster of bands at NAMM, on their website, on the main stage, it's a big coup. And I don't take the full credit for it. My whole band and the team makes the dream work, obviously, but super excited to be able to showcase that this year. And that was definitely a few stepping stones to get there.
So speaking of live performance, what was the first live show, whether jazz or otherwise, that you witnessed that blew you away, that made you think, I want to be up there one day?
Oh, I mean, I saw so many concerts, but in gospel, one of the first concerts that I remember seeing that was just like, wow. In DC, I went to see the artist Kirk Franklin, who has won tons of Grammys, and I've talked to people like Phil Lassiter, who was his horn player for a long time. And basically, he's like a mini gospel prince, like sings and actually he doesn't. Ironically, he does not sing. He speaks in a certain cadence, but it's not rap. And then but he plays piano and he writes all these great songs, and he writes so well for vocals for choirs without singing. But essentially, I know he had a tragic accident at one point as a kid where he was at a concert and he fell backstage and was unconscious. And so after that, he just came back and was fine and exploded. But I saw him and just seeing wow, this man dances and so much energy that he puts into the music and everything about it. And really, growing up, I was only allowed to listen to gospel music, but he was a pioneer in crossing over into pop and R&B. And so in his gospel, he would pull artists like George Clinton, who I became a huge fan of, who just got a Hollywood Walk of Fame, a star, into it. And so it it gave me forays of funk and really started to show me the underpinnings of like in the American roots, how all those musics kind of come together and how they pull from each other. But yeah, that was one of the first concerts that I saw where I was just like in this huge stadium and just everybody was excited and it was just really good. It wasn't even about being in a genre, like it happened to be gospel music, but I mean just the level of the musicianship and the players and how they put the music together and how they sang and just the talent that was there and people from that band have gone on to do, you know, work with Tyler Perry and other stuff and so it just showed like the range of how good they were, but definitely like I would say that and seeing, you know, Michael Jackson stop The Simpsons and premiere video, those were like the first things of like, wow, I want to do that. I want to do exactly what that guy's doing when I grow up.
When I was a kid, my dad won tickets to the Michael Jackson Victory Tour in '85. And we were at
Mm.
Arrowhead. And when that glove came up out of the ground, because there was a little hole, man, dude, there was people fainting. It was just, it was, and the light they had on it and the sparkles, it like, it just like was a glamorized mirror ball, just hit us all in the iris. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I didn't get to go when I was a kid. My aunt and my great grandparents, they took her to the Bad Tour. They were like, "We're not going to take you because you're too young." I was probably 5 or 6, and then after that, he stopped touring America. So I never got to see him. But I do always tell people that like, not only was he an artist that could stop primetime television, which nobody was ever to do again, but he also was the only artist I've seen make grown men cry. I mean, they cut to a video, I'm just bawling, like
yeah.
bawling, like the Beatles with schoolgirls. I've never seen it. I was like, the energy, and people do, they faint. And again, like I said, the parallels between church. We had, you know, pastors that they throw their jacket and people would pass out. Same thing. It looked exactly the same.
Uh-huh.
The people just getting hyped up.
Yep, totally. So what is the joy, what is the best part of being a professional musician for you? You obviously have live performance, recordings, all of these things that go into it, but what wakes you up every day and really makes you tick as a musician?
I mean, it's always different. It ebbs and flowing different. There's so many different aspects of it. I definitely will say that the songwriting aspect for me is huge. I think also, you know, from a business perspective and licensing perspective, writing your own songs, that's definitely an avenue. And so there's some singers that didn't write. But you know, I like to see even artists that you don't think about, like an Ella Fitzgerald, like she did co-write, you know, a handful of songs. Even Frank Sinatra co-wrote a handful, a few. And so I think it's good. I tell all my band members, I was like, everyone should have a project. Everyone should make at least one album, you know, to know what that's like. And then from there, I think, yeah, everyone should write a few songs too, just to kind of know the feeling. And no, I'm not talking about ChatGPT and AI, right? Write it yourself, you know, you are the AI because the experiences that you go through, I think for me, the singing and writing, it's cathartic. And so having that outlet is it's something I'd go crazy without it. Um, there's some ways where when you're singing, you can get out an emotion that I don't think you can really get out anywhere else. And so for me, music in its purest form, it's like people say, you know, you would do it for free. I mean, you want to do it for money, but you would do it for free because you love it so much. It's a part of you, and you have to do it. And so, yeah, I would say definitely singing in its purest form, just to get energy and emotion out there. And I just love it so much. And then definitely the songwriting. I mean, it's always great to be able to cover, and I did a lot of covers in this album, but there is one original, and I love always putting at least one original to show people, wow, you know, I really do enjoy songwriting, and I've been fortunate to win songwriting awards like the John Lennon Songwriting Contest and World Songwriting Awards and stuff. So I'm always putting stuff out there, but I tell people all the time, you know, do you? No one can say that you did you wrong. You know, only you know. But sometimes if you don't do it, then that song, you know, that we love so much, we may never get to hear, and you're getting to add to that songbook. You know, that's why we have a Duke Ellington, the Cole Porter, because they put the songs out there, and they were like, let's do something different than what was done before.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one jazz performance, where are you going?
Well, I tell everybody, you don't go past 68, and you know why. But for me, there's so many great Um, oh gosh, jazz performances. Wow. I mean, I'd love to see some really cool Montreal stuff. You know, I tell people that Ella, she had this kind of live period. You can definitely hear it in the 60s, even into the early 70s, where she just like she was a little weathered and she didn't care. And I love that. And
Yeah.
so you know, you just leave it all out there. And so yeah, I think seeing some of those concerts in the early 70s would be amazing. From the jazz world, definitely, you know, Ella and a lot of the Montreal stuff. And then I would say also Fillmore West, which is no longer around. A lot of the concerts there, you look at like Aretha live at the Fillmore West, or even Aretha's gospel album that finally came out after 30 years as a documentary. That in that church would be amazing to have seen
Yeah.
live. And you see people like Mick Jagger in the audience, and they're just like blown away. So, and James Brown in the 70s, I think, you know, by Sex Machine, I would love to see that live at an Olympia concert too.
I'm reading a book on the Apollo. It's kind of an illustrated version, and you know, all James started there. I mean, he had to get clothes from people because he didn't have threads. And Ella, you know, they always talk about her first time and how
Mhm.
hardcore it is. That I would love to just be at one amateur night just to see the mayhem, because they had somebody that man, what do they call, oh, Port, his name was Puerto Rico, and he had a broom and he would just whack people off stage if they were bad. And they got into the people that did good just as much as they booed everybody off the stage. But I remember that as a kid, when I'd see that show come on, I would be like, what is this? And it was wild, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I went once on a field trip as a kid, probably in summer of 8th grade, to an amateur night on Wednesday,
Wow.
and they had the Sandman there and the stuff. Yeah, it was crazy. And I remember, you know, because it was predominantly black. They had this one rock band, and the rock band was they just turned up to 11, like every amp was cranked, and people booed from the first note, but they couldn't kick them off because it was so loud. They just overblew all the boos, and I was like, I respect everything you've done. That you just knew that it was gonna get booed, and you just didn't care. But also, I was like, people will give you the audience will give you like, you know, they'll tell you the truth. You
Yeah.
know, if you need to work on it or whatever, you know, Lauren Hill and other people, I mean, they get booed and it's fine, and then they still say, hey, I have some stuff to learn and to grow, and that's a learning opportunity for them. But then people they love, like they really support you and rally around you and that stuff too. And someone like Ella, I mean, you know, Ella was trying to come to dance, and she got so nervous. She's like, these other girls are too good. I'm not going to dance. And she starts singing. And if she didn't, we may never have ever heard her. In the
Yeah.
same way, but Nat King Cole, he's at a club in LA playing piano, and they're like, "Hey, which one do you sing?" And she's like, "Nobody." It's like, "Well, if you don't sing, you're not getting paid." And he's like, "Straighten up and fly right." So you know, like people get those opportunities that we just wouldn't have known otherwise, because music is not a linear path. So we're happy and fortunate that we had the Apollo for so many years, and people like Steve Harvey and others, the champion. No, you got to rub that log for luck and just get
That's
out there and do
it.
your best.
That's right. That's right. Um, so everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, I mean, I'm always changing. Really, I'm just looking in the mirror every day, trying to become the better self than yesterday. You know, I'm always kind of putting out things that I love and enjoy. But I think when people see me or what I see as myself, I see myself as a true artist. I march to my own drum. I make my own beat if I need to, and people think, you know, the dancer is crazy because they can't always hear the music. But that's not a me problem, that's a them problem. And so as I continue to just become better, I just don't let anything stop me. I'm a person that's like an ant. If something's in my way, I'll go over it, I'll go under it, I'll go around it, I'll go through it, I'm gonna figure it out. And it takes time, and it takes money, it takes discipline. But I've cultivated that all within me. So ultimately, you know, people look at me sometimes and they're like, "Oh, he's a machine." I'm not. I'm a human. I have feelings and things happen, and I get rejected and it all sucks. But you know, I feel the fear and I do it anyway. At the end of the day, it's like, do it or don't do it. The time is going to pass either way. So get out there and do it.
Well said. So if anyone wants to pick up the new album, delve into all of these different pursuits that are a part of your world, where's the best place to go?
Oh, it's gonna be out on everywhere. There's limited editions on CDs, so they can hit me up on social media at Clippers Music. It's on Bandcamp, and then from there, it'll be on all streaming platforms as well. So you showed me the way. Check it out. I think it's gonna be a great listen for everybody.
It is. I love it. Cliff, this has been great, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with the album. Have a great 2024.
You too as well. We'll talk soon. Take care.